This is radio training for the Yolo County Health Department Emergency Preparedness Division and the Hospital Preparedness Coalition. In this video, you'll learn how to use a Vertex Standard handheld radio. These may be used in case of an emergency or on a day-to-day basis by your facility. Be sure to check with your supervisor on how your agency uses this piece of equipment. There are 3 parts to this video. Part 1 is the description of parts and their function. Part 2 is the radio channels and their use, and Part 3 is the responsibility of the radio user. This video is about 10 minutes long. Part 1, the radio parts and their function. This is the standard Vertex radio. This is the on-off and volume control dial. When you turn the dial, it beeps, telling you it's on. The radio does not make a sound when it's turned off. The knob is also used for volume control. After turning the radio on, be sure to listen first so you do not interfere with any ongoing radio traffic. This is the radio channel selector dial. It is next to the power dial. It has numbers around the dial to show what channel the radio is currently on. Turn the dial to the channel you would like to listen to. The radio list is taped on the front of the radio. Be sure to read the list carefully, as different radios can be programmed differently, especially if you're borrowing the radio from another agency. The channel list shows the designation for all 16 channels programmed on the radio. This is the radio's antenna. This is the push-to-talk button. This is the squelch button. It's directly below the push-to-talk button. This is where the radio microphone is located. On the back of your radio is a belt clip. The belt clip is for attaching the radio to your clothing if needed. This is your radio's battery. On the bottom of the radio there is a battery release button to remove the battery. You shouldn't need to remove the battery unless there's something wrong with the battery. This is your radio's charger. There are 3 small dots on the back of your radio which connect the radio's battery to the charger. To charge the radio, simply place the radio into the cradle until it fully connects. The radio will slide down into the cradle charger. A light on the charger will blink red, then stay green once the battery is fully charged. When the battery is low, the radio will beep and a red light will also blink. When you return the radio to the charging cradle, make sure the charging light comes on. If the charging light does not come on, the radio is not being charged. The light verifies that the radio is properly seated in the cradle and the battery is being charged. Make sure the battery is charged at all times. If the battery is completely dead, it'll take about 24 hours for the battery to fully charge. To use your radio, turn on the radio using the power dial and then verify the channel that you'd like to use. To transmit your message, press and hold in the push-to-talk button that's on the side of the radio. Pause for 1 breath before speaking into the microphone area. This 1 breath will allow the radio to switch into a transmitting mode. If you start talking at the same time as you push the button, it's possible that the first part of your message will be missed. The radio is transmitting when the red light on top of the radio is illuminated. When speaking into the microphone, shield it away from the wind and speak across the microphone, not directly into it. Wind blowing directly into the radio can create a static sound for the listener. Always use a normal speaking voice. Release the button when you're done speaking. If you don't release the button, you won't be able to hear the other person's reply. Do not depress the push-to-talk button when other people are talking, because this will disrupt their conversation and cause dead air where nobody can communicate. A two-way radio is not like a telephone. You cannot hear anyone else if you're talking, and no one can speak when you are talking. If everyone talks at one time, transmissions will be garbled. Always try to listen more than you talk. Speak only when necessary, and keep it short and to the point. The most important thing about using a radio effectively is listening. Part 2. The radio is programmed with 12 simplex channels and 4 repeated channels. This gives the radio 16 channels for total use. Simplex and repeated channels have very different uses. Simplex channels are channels listed 1 through 12 and are direct communications between the radios. Channels 1 and 2 are simplex channels assigned to your facility so you can talk to one another without disrupting an emergency channel. Every facility has 2 simplex channels programmed for their use. The 2 simplex channels are shared and reused by several facilities. This is possible due to a feature called CTC-SS, where every facility has a unique code that only lets you hear your own units while ignoring other facility radio communications. Channels 3 through 12 are channels that can be used to talk to other facilities in the event of a mutual aid event. If you're having difficulty communicating using a simplex channel because the other person is too far away, then you may need to communicate on a repeated channel. Repeated channels are listed 13 through 16. These radio channels use equipment called a repeater located at Bald Peak, 20 miles west of Woodland, to provide county-wide radio coverage. Channels 13 and 14, which are labeled as MedNet 1 and MedNet 7, are exclusively for hospital-to-ambulance communications. The MedNet channels are shared by all counties in Northern California and should only be used in an emergency to communicate with a hospital or ambulance. Channel 15, labeled as for Yolo, is an interoperability channel. This channel can be used for communications between outside fire and law enforcement agencies needing to talk to Yolo County agencies. Channel 16 is labeled as Yolo HS. That's the Yolo County Health Services channel. This is your primary channel to talk to the Health Services Department and County 911 dispatch. This channel can be used for any medical purposes, for example, skilled nursing, outpatient care, and clinics communication. If a second radio channel were needed, then you'd use channel 15, which is labeled for Yolo. This is the squelch button. It has 2 functions, one when it's on and another when it's off. When the button is on, it allows for quiet radio monitoring, meaning you won't hear any fuzzy white noise, and it allows you to listen to only the simplex channel that you're on. When the button is off, it lets you hear the fuzzy white noise and brings certain simplex channels together for group simplex listening. For example, with the squelch button on, the user will not hear any noise on the radio unless someone is talking and will only be able to listen to their own facility's simplex channel. With the squelch button off, the user will hear a fuzzy white noise and will be able to hear all agency simplex channels with a similar title together at one time. Simplex channels labeled with a 1 in the title will be grouped together so they can be listened to all at once. The same can be done with simplex channels labeled with 2 in the title. So the squelch button either cuts out the fuzzy white noise for quiet radio monitoring or brings certain simplex channels together so you can listen to a whole group of channels at once. When you initially turn your radio on, the squelch button will usually already be on. It's important to have the button on so as not to interfere with other agencies' simplex channels unless you need to communicate with them. To turn the squelch on or off, press and hold in this button for 2 seconds. Part 3. The radio operator's responsibility. It is the primary responsibility of a radio user to pass accurate and timely information from the sender to the receiver and follow through with an accurate and timely response to the sender. You should only use a radio when necessary and always speak clearly. Radios are not toys like walkie-talkies. Use plain language. Avoid technical terminology or jargon unless it is deemed to be operationally necessary. Repeat critical information and confirm correct information. Only say addresses when necessary. Be sure to limit your speaking to no more than 10 seconds long. Anything longer will not allow anyone with emergency traffic to use the frequency. It's okay to insert breaks in transmissions that need to be longer. Do not speak when someone else is talking. Always say over when it's time for the other person to talk. When 2 other people are talking to each other, do not jump in unless they ask for you. Know what you're going to say before you depress the push-to-talk button. Do not hold the push-to-talk button in while looking for information. This will tie up the radio frequency for others. HIPAA rules do apply to radio users, so never use actual names or anything else that can connect a patient with their data. Do not speak louder in a noisy environment. If you speak louder than is needed for normal speech, the radio will distort your voice, reducing clarity and making you hard to understand. Pro words. What are pro words? Pro words are a special set of words used for clarity and to abbreviate communications. They also help expedite radio messages and reduce copying errors. An example of the 4 basic pro words are "this is." This is used to identify who is calling. Over. Over means I have finished speaking and now it's your turn to speak. Go ahead. Go ahead means I'm ready to listen. Out. Out means I am finished speaking and I don't expect a reply. There is a list of common pro words and their meaning in your handout packet that goes along with this video. Also, when using a radio, try to use the phonetic alphabet. The phonetic alphabet is a set of words used instead of alphabetic letters in radio communication. Each word stands for its initial letter. For example, Alpha means A, Bravo means B, and Charlie means C. There is also a list of the phonetic alphabet in your handout packet. When speaking numbers on the radio, use the pro words figures, decimal, time, and initials. Say the numbers digit by digit. For example, 750 would read figures 750. 3A would read figure 3-initial alpha. 14.5 would read figures 14.5. So in conclusion, please use caution when using a radio. The general public and news media have radios and can hear what you're saying. Always think about what you want to say and how to say it. It's important to maintain good radio discipline by setting a good example, prioritizing messages and requests. Try to write things down because in an emergency it's likely you will not remember everything, especially when it gets busy. The last and most important thing to remember is the ABC of radio use. Be accurate, be brief, and be clear. It's okay to practice using the radio on the simplex channels, and remember channels 13 and 14, which are MedNet 1 and MedNet 7, are exclusively reserved for hospital to ambulance communications. We would like to thank the Yolo County Health Department for producing this video. If you have any questions about this training or using a Vertex Standard radio, please contact the Yolo County Health Department at 530-666-8645 and ask for the Emergency Preparedness Division.